Hi everyone and welcome to my time-lapse video of Lucy the Jack Russell in soft pastel. On the left here you can see my layout which I photoshopped together using several photo references given to me by my client. In the middle is my finished pastel painting, and then to the right that's Lucy in her lovely frame with one of her favourite humans. So I hope you enjoy the progression, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe to me here on YouTube and also give me a visit over on my Patreon channel if you're interested in learning more of my pastel techniques with more in-depth tutorials. Enjoy the video. I'm working on Velour pastel paper using a mixture of pastels, but mostly Unison soft pastels, some Terry Ludwig's and a few harder Faber Castell sticks. And this was quite a tricky composition as I was sent several photos of Lucy going crazy amongst some bubbles, which apparently she just loves to chase. And so it made a really fitting portrait that she should be surrounded by these bubbles. But it was tricky just to come up with a nice composition and not overdo it with the bubbles. And I spent some time using Photoshop just to piece together from different photo references. And this was what I came up with. But my first task is to render all of that lovely soft furnishings around her, the lovely fabric sofa and the cream cushion just behind her. And I love working on things like this. I love adding backgrounds to portraits, making them more than just a floating head, or I love having some surroundings there just to give a sense of where the animal is. And often a sofa makes a great backdrop as it brings in some lovely colours from your client's home. So I'm fond of painting sofas. I paint a lot of sofas and soft furnishings. And I spend just as long on this part of a painting as I do on the dog itself. I spent a good couple of days working this background, not including the bubbles, just the texture of the sofa itself and the cream cushion, which Lucy will stand out really nicely against. So I think the main key is when painting backgrounds to not rush them. I figured out quite a while ago that I really need to take as long on the backgrounds as on the main subject itself. So I pay attention to every square inch of a painting and really try not to rush through the background. And with a sofa like this, with a texture like this, I suppose I'm really looking at it as if it were fur, just looking for my dark values first and coming gradually up into the lighter tints. But it's really about taking your time. And these bubbles, these were the first bubbles I've ever painted, which was a lot of fun. And they're so colourful. The photo reference that I was sent, the bubbles were actually photographed against this sofa. So because you can see through the bubbles, it's good to have those deep purples in the centre. But they really do shine a rainbow of colours, as you'll see with the rest of the bubbles. And on to little Lucy. This is the area of a painting where I always feel most comfortable working on. Animals are my first love to paint. And this month over on my Patreon channel, I'm going to be helping my patrons figure out different textures like this sofa in particular, and shiny leather and clothing folds in fabrics. I think being able to paint many different textures is really important as you try to develop as an artist. I started out painting really just pet portraits and people portraits with very plain backgrounds. I always shied away from backgrounds. I had no confidence or felt I had no ability in that area. And it's taken a long time really to start to enjoy painting the backgrounds as much as I do the main subject. And it's just a matter of practice. Those were subject matters that I never painted, therefore I had no experience. And I had lots of experience painting animals and people, so I obviously felt more comfortable there. But the more you do it, then the more you get to enjoy it. And it really opens up your skills as an artist, gives you a whole other scope of things that you can paint. And it just makes you start to look at challenges a bit differently. Things that seemed very daunting before, suddenly you're able to break it down and take your time on something and really figure it out as you go along without panicking. So that's what I hope to do in next month's series of tutorials on my Patreon channel. Break down several different textures into bite size and hopefully make them seem a bit less daunting. But you'll also find lots of videos both on my YouTube channel and Patreon about painting dogs. That's one of my favourite subjects to paint, and I've painted so many dogs over the years. And Lucy was no exception. I loved working on her sweet little face. And the velour paper that I use, it's great for creating all sorts of different textures. I do work on some other papers too, more recently pastel matte and UArt paper, but I always do fall back to my first love of velour. I find I can be a bit more painterly on the velour. I don't have to worry about each little individual mark quite as much. But you can see that I can come back in with the pastel pencils and neaten up the whole effect. So you can get the fine detail on this paper, but I just find that for backgrounds especially, I can be a little looser and a bit more painterly on this paper. And I make use of the pastel pencils for the smaller details, especially the darker areas like in around the collar. But it's always those soft pastels that I pick up when I really need the strength of colour. And you can get small details with your pastel sticks by breaking them down, and they wear down into lots of different shapes. So don't feel limited by the soft pastels, just break a big stick and find the sharp edge that you're looking for. And you can see how I've painted the sofa, making sure to get the shadows behind Lucy's paws, so that when I paint in her legs and her paws, it really seems like she's sunken into the sofa. And it's just all about noticing where the light is hitting and where the shadows fall. Really, when you're painting, it's like you're capturing light almost. And it's just all about the way the light falls on objects and the shadows that it creates. And for me, there's just no better medium for capturing light than soft pastel. I love this medium. I've been painting in pastel for, well, possibly 20 years now. I've been painting since I discovered pastel in my early teens. And I was using a mixture of poor quality pastels back then when I was studying art in school and college. But I loved the medium and knew that I wanted to continue in it. And since then, I've upgraded the quality of my supplies. And I've had a long time to practice and figure things out. But I'm still learning. There's still so much to learn. And I hope that through my YouTube channel here and my Patreon channel, I can really help other artists skip out some of those early steps of trial and error and point them in the right direction. And I love to see that. I love to help other artists and see their work leap forward and make vast improvements. It's really rewarding for me as well. So I've just got the bubbles to work. And they were a lot of fun. I was picking out some of my really vibrant turquoises and purples and pinks. And also trying not to make them perfectly circular. So I drew them in freehand, hoping that they would be a little wobbly and look like they are wobbling their way through the air. So you don't have to be too perfect with the bubbles either. In fact, sometimes the more wonky they are, the more real they look. So I hope you've enjoyed the progress of this quirky little portrait. I love to get a real challenge to work on, and this was definitely one of those. As I mentioned at the beginning, please do subscribe to me here on YouTube. I'm bringing out so much more content in the coming year. And I really appreciate all the support from my patrons over on Patreon who have been really making this possible and helping me take more time to devote to making videos and tutorials. So thanks for watching and happy pasteling.